Welcome to another lesson on credit risk. Credit risk is also referred to as default risk. So when you lend out money, you are lending in the belief that the borrower is going to pay you back. Sometimes the borrower may not have the intention of paying you back. Sometimes the borrower will have the intention of paying you back, but unforeseen circumstances come up which makes it difficult for the borrower to honor their obligation. So credit risk is a risk undertaken by the lender that the borrower will default either on interest payments or on the repayment of principal on the due date, or both. Since when you lend, you are lending to also make money by charging interest. So the borrower has to pay on top of what they've borrowed, the principal. They also have to pay interest. So there will be interest payments and there will be the repayment of the principal. So the borrower can either default on both the interest and the principal repayment, or they could pay interest and then come and fail to repay the principal. So this is known as credit risk or default risk. So the credit risk arises from the inability of a party to fulfill its obligation under the terms of a contract. So creditors to companies such as corporate bondholders and banks are also exposed to credit risk. The credit risk of an individual loan or bond is determined by the following two factors. So basically, anyone lending out money either a corporation or a financial institution such as a bank or any other creditors, they are all exposed to credit risk. And the factors which determine this are as follows. The first one is the probability of default. This is the probability that the borrower or counterparty will default on its contractual obligation to repay the loan. So the question will give you the probability of default. Then you also have the recovery rate. The recovery rate is the fraction of the face value of an obligation that can be recovered once the borrower has defaulted. When any company defaults, bondholders do not necessarily lose their entire investment. Part of the investment may be recovered depending on the recovery rate. It's very rare that a borrower will default just from the word go. Okay. So the lender will have recovered some of their benefits up to the stage when the borrower defaults. So depending on the recovery rate, that will determine just how much the lender will have recovered. Okay? So if the recovery rate is low, then the lender will have recovered a small amount. If the recovery rate is high, then the lender will have recovered most of their investment or their benefits from lending.
This percentage is also given in the exam?
Yes, it is given. So let's look at some calculation. We've got the loss given default, which is the difference between the amount of money owed by the borrower less the amount of money recovered. To illustrate with an example, a bond has a face value of $100 and the recovery rate is 80%. The loss given default in this case will be 100 minus $80 equals $20. Then you've got the expected loss. The expected loss from credit risk shows the amount of money the lender should expect to lose from the investment in a bond or loan with credit risk. It's given by a formula as well. The expected loss of the product of the loss given default and the probability of default. So you multiply the probability of default times the loss given default to give you your expected loss. Again, to illustrate, if the probability of default is say 10%, then the expected loss arising from the above bond will be expected loss equals 0.10 times 20 equals $2. These are basically simple calculations, but you find in the study there are not so many examples. So when the examiner tends to bring them, students either they've not had a lot of practice or they've not been reviewing these simple calculations, so they just have a bit of scanty knowledge, then they end up not getting those easy marks. And again, mostly because sometimes the examiner also will surprise you when you think he's going to bring the very hard questions on hedging, investment appraisal, reconstruction. Then all of a sudden he throws in such an easy type of question. You've been concentrating on the hard stuff. So you find that you should, from time to time, just go through this to refresh. As you can see, the calculations are not difficult. We move to credit migration. Now, a borrower usually will be assessed before they borrow. The lender will assess the credit worthiness of the borrower. Okay? And it may be found that the credit rating of the borrower is quite good. But over time, either due to the actions undertaken by management or due to other factors, the credit rating of the borrower may reduce. Okay? So that's what credit migration is all about. So the credit rating of a borrower may change after a bond is issued. Okay? This is referred to as credit migration. There is another aspect of credit risk which should be taken into account when investors are investing in corporate bond beyond the probability of default. So a borrower may not default, but due to changing economic conditions or management actions, the borrower may become more or less risky than at the time the bond was issued. And as a result, the bond issuer will be assigned a different credit rating by the credit agents. This is called credit migration. What's the significance? The significance of credit migration lies in the fact that the assignment of a lower credit rating will increase the market value of the corporate bond. There are different credit ratings. There's AAA, there's AA, there's A, there's BBB, there's BB, there's C, CCC, etc., etc. These ratings will kind of indicate how risky a borrower is or how credit worthy a borrower is. And from these ratings also, lenders are able to ascertain just how much risk they're being exposed to if they're going to lend to this borrower, and hence that will also help to determine the amount of returns they may want to be exposed to the risk of lending to such a borrower. So the credit spread and the cost of capital, the cost of debt, capital, and the market price of corporate bonds will depend on the credit risk of the bond. We look at credit spread. The credit spread is the premium required by an investor in a corporate bond to compensate for the credit risk of the bond. Okay? Like we alluded, the lender is being exposed to risk. Is being exposed to this default risk. So, for being exposed to default risk, also they are being denied the ability to utilize these funds to their satisfaction at the present time. Okay, so they are basically deferring the enjoyment of their resources. So they'll need to be compensated. They'll need to be compensated.
And that's the premium.
Yes. So the credit risk is the premium required by an investor in a corporate bond to compensate for the credit risk of the bond. The yield to a government bond holder is a compensation to the investor for foregoing consumption today and saving. However, corporate bond holders should require compensation not only for foregoing consumption, but also for the credit risk that they are exposed to. Okay, so you've got this combination of being denied the benefit of utilizing your resources now would have gone for a holiday had you not given these funds to somebody to borrow. Okay. At the same time, you're being exposed to risk. So all these factors are taken into account when determining the compensation. So the formula, which again you have to memorize, is yield on corporate bond equals risk-free rate plus credit spread. Since the credit spread reflects the credit risk of a bond, they will be inversely related to the credit quality of the bonds. What this means is that low credit quality bonds will be characterized by large spreads, and high credit quality bonds will be characterized by low spreads. In summary, a low quality bond will cost more.
Oh,
Okay? Because of the risk. Hence the spread being large. In the high quality bonds, the cost will be low because the risk is also reduced. Included is a table to illustrate the spreads. So as you can see, the most high quality bond is a AAA. Then as you move from A to C, the quality of the bond is reducing. And also, as you move to the future, the longer into the future it takes for the bond to pay back, the higher the spread becomes because of the uncertainties in the increased risk of default. So as you can see, you're moving year 1, you've got a spread of 5, year 2, a spread of 10. The spread is increasing as you go all the way to 30 years.
I actually don't have that data. I have the examples. So because these are basic addition calculations.
Yeah. So, and as you move from AA, AAA to AA, you see that the spread is also what? Is also increasing. And as you move diagonal from the top A to the bottom, the last of C, you can see there that you've got 1,400 on 30 years.
Which is like lowest to highest.
Yes. From the lowest is 5, the highest is 1,400 spread. Okay. These are also known as basis points.
Like yesterday's question.
Yes.
Okay.
So you have to divide them by 100. Okay.
Well, it explains how we're now able to say we add to the.
So let's look at that example. The current return on a 10-year bond, government bond, is 4.2%. Roger Inc., a company rated AA, has 10-year bonds in issue. Using the credit spread table above, calculate the expected yield of Roger Inc.'s bond. The credit spread on a 10-year AA bond. So we go to AA, 10-year bond, we find a credit spread of 52, which means that, okay, so the 52 0.52%. You divide that by, okay, they've just taken them as percentages. So you add that to the government bond of 4.2 to give you 4.72. No, actually the 52 has to be divided by 100 to give you 0.52.
Oh, notice this isn't a percent. Because percent again.
Well, it's a basis point. It's a basis point, so it still has to be divided by 100.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so the expected yield on Roger Inc.'s bond will be 4.72%. We look at another example. A 15-year government bond has a current yield of 5%. DB Inc., a B-rated company, has equivalent bonds in issue. What is the expected yield on DB Inc.'s bond? So 15 years. It's B-rated, okay, B-rated. When you go to B, but you find there is no 15 years on the table. From 10 years, the next is what? 30 years. Okay, so what you do, you get an average. So since the table does not include credit spread for 15-year bonds, therefore some adjustment is required to the figures that are given. So the credit spread on a 10-year B-rated bond is 350, and the 30-year B-rated bond is 450. So the adjustment can be calculated as follows: 350 for 10. Okay, so you're moving from 10, so you want to now to arrive at 15.
Okay.
So 450 minus 350 divided by 30 years minus 10 years, then times 5. So that gives you 375, which means that 3.75% must be added. So the 375 is the basis, so you divide it by 100. Must be added to the yield on government bonds. So the expected yield for DB's bond is therefore 5% plus 3.75 to give you 8.75%.
Now I have a question on this one. Didn't you say we needed to average the basis points of the 10 and the 30? So why have they subtracted on this in this fraction that they made in the middle to say 450?
By dividing there, on top you're subtracting the bottom, then dividing the two numbers.
Yeah, but then why are they subtracting, not adding? Like weighted average, where we usually add.
No, it says different.
It's different.
You're trying to arrive at a midpoint. You've got 30 this side, you've got 10 this side.
So
To arrive at what? In between.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there a case where you would go beyond? Like the table maybe ends at 30 and they ask you for something beyond that?
No. In the exams, they usually don't give you tables. Like I said,
Oh, right.
they'll simply tell you the spread for this bond is so, the spread for this bond is. When the company changes its credit rating or it borrows, by borrowing, the risk increases, so the rating drops to BB, and the BB spread is so much. Yeah.
But the letters, those are universal, the universal system
Yes.
that's used to grade.
we look at the cost of debt capital. The cost of debt capital for a company is determined by the following. It's determined by its credit rating, the maturity of the debt, the risk-free rate at the appropriate maturity, and the corporate tax rates. Very important for you to remember those. Those are substituted in the formula. Cost of debt capital equals 1 minus the tax, in brackets, open brackets again, risk-free rate plus credit spread. We look at the impact of credit spread on bond values. The deterioration in the credit quality of a bond, referred to as credit migration, will affect the market value of the bond. So the value of a bond is the present value of the coupon and the redemption value. We already discussed that with examples, discounted using the appropriate cost of debt capital. So when the capital structure changes due to financial risk, either increasing or reducing, that will affect the quality of the bond. Hence, it will also affect the value of the bond. Okay. So we've got this cost of debt capital, we've got the yield by credit categories. The categories AAA all the way up to CC, then the years from year 1 to year 3. Again, you notice the pattern. Year 1, the spread is low. As you move into the future, the spread starts to increase. Again, from AAA, the spread is low. As you move towards C, now, as you move towards C, the spread starts to increase. So the value of a bond is the present value of the coupons and the redemption value discounted. We've explained that discounted using the appropriate cost of debt. Suppose a BBB bond has a face value of $100 and pays an annual coupon of 6%. Using the discount factors from the table above, we calculate the value of the bond at the end of a year if it remains rated BBB. So your coupon is 6%. 6% times 100 gives you 6. Okay, then you discount the coupon. It's a 3-year bond. So you discount, no, it's a 4-year bond. So you discount the coupon for 4 years, for 3 years, then in the last year you discount the coupon plus the nominal 106. So the value of that bond is 101.53. If it is upgraded to A, so we are going to use the A yield category. So A is 3.72, 4.32, 4.93 and 5.32. That's what we use to discount. You see that the value of the bond has done what? Has increased to 102.64. If it's downgraded to CC, triple C, you see that the value also does what? Reduces. Because triple C, the yield is 15.05, 15.02, 14.03 and 13.52. So that brings us to the end of credit risk, credit migration. For your homework, I want you to go and research on the criteria for establishing credit ratings. There are 10 criteria for establishing credit ratings. Go and research on those and submit as your homework. Thank you. We are done for this lesson on credit risk.